All right, let's just dive right in. Think about this for a second. Pain and pleasure. I mean, these two forces pretty much run the show, don't they? They shape our entire lives, from what we decide to have for lunch to our greatest achievements. But have you ever really, truly stopped to ask, what are they? Today, we're going to explore a completely different way of looking at these feelings we all know so well. So let's start our investigation right at the heart of the puzzle. Where do these incredibly powerful, all-encompassing feelings actually come from? This is the big one, isn't it? It's something every single one of us deals with every day. We're constantly navigating this world of things that feel good and things that, well, don't. But the source of those feelings, that's still a huge mystery. And look, we're not just talking about extreme pain or pure bliss. Our lives are just filled with this massive spectrum of sensations. Any tiny bit of joy, that's a form of pleasure. And any little discomfort, that's technically a form of pain. And of course, some things we encounter just don't make us feel anything at all. They're totally neutral.
Okay, so to crack this mystery wide open, we're going to need to reframe the whole thing. And we'll do it with a kind of surprising analogy from everyday life: an electrical outlet. The way we usually see it, life is this giant tug of war, right? Pleasure is pulling us one way and pain is pushing us back from the other. We imagine them as these two equal, opposite forces locked in a constant battle, and our actions are just the result. But what if that's not how it works at all?
And this is where that new idea really clicks. So instead of thinking of pleasure as a plus, and pain as a minus, think about that wall socket. It doesn't have a plus and a minus. It has a phase, that's the part with the electrical potential, the juice, and a neutral, which is really just the absence of that potential. One is the primary state, and the other is just what happens when it's not there.
Okay, so if one sensation is the phase, where does that potential, that energy, actually come from? To figure that out, we need to dig into the source of sensation itself. Now, science gets us part of the way there. We know all about hormones and chemical reactions in our cells that can trigger raw physical feelings. But when it comes to the more subtle stuff, feelings like awe or nostalgia or that weird sense of melancholy, the purely biochemical explanation starts to feel a little incomplete. That's where we have to look a bit deeper.
And this leads us to this really fascinating philosophical concept called qualia. The basic idea here is that sensations don't actually start inside of us. Instead, they exist from the very beginning, a priori, out there in some kind of universal field of potential experiences.
So how do we tap into this universal field of feeling? Well, it seems to be a kind of three-step process. First, something happens, a stimulus that activates our biological networks of neurons and proteins. Second, these networks start to vibrate at a certain frequency, either resonating with the qualia space or creating a kind of dissonance. And third, the sensation that matches that frequency gets, for lack of a better word, downloaded from that space and projected right into our consciousness.
And get this isn't just for complex creatures with big brains like us. This ability to connect to qualia might be there at the very foundation of life itself. Why? Because a single, tiny living cell has millions of unique protein networks inside it. Every single one is like a potential antenna, capable of tuning into this universal field of sensation. Okay, now let's bring it all home. We've got our electrical analogy and this idea of qualia. With those two pieces, we can finally get to the true nature of pain. So which is it? Which sensation is the phase? The one that's real, the one that actually exists as a fundamental potential in the universe? And which one is the neutral, just the absence of the other? And there it is, the radical, central claim of this whole idea. Pleasure is the fundamental, existing state. It's the phase of our existence. Which means pain. Well, pain must be something else entirely. Probably the best way to wrap your head around this is with another simple analogy: light and darkness. Light is a real thing, right? It's a form of energy, it exists. But darkness isn't a thing. It's just the absence of light. This theory suggests it's the exact same deal with pleasure and pain. Pleasure is the real existing state, and pain is simply the absence of pleasure. Now, this is why pain feels so real, why it feels like an actual force. Our consciousness doesn't really perceive a void. When there's no light, our eyes don't just see nothing, they register the specific sensation we call the color black. In the same way, when our being isn't connecting with that fundamental state of pleasure, our consciousness registers that absence as the very specific sensation we call pain.
So what do we do with all this? If pleasure is our natural, fundamental state, this last part explores the path back to what the source calls primordial ecstasy. According to this viewpoint, our lives follow this really clear path. We're actually born into an ocean of pleasure. That's our default setting. But then, life happens. Our biological processes kick in, and a separation is created from that original state. And that distance, that's what we feel as pain. So our body creates all these other nuanced feelings to cope and survive. But through practice, it's possible to find these little islands of neutrality, and from there, you can actually make your way back. What this means is that the way forward isn't about chasing pleasure or running from pain. It's actually about finding neutrality. It's about detaching from that constant push and pull of the world around us. And if you can do that, you can find moments of real, absolute inner peace. And here's the ultimate reward: that sustained neutrality, that calm. It isn't an empty state, it's a return. This theory suggests that after you maintain that inner peace for a while, you can actually reconnect with that original state you were born into. You get to feel that primordial ecstasy all over again. And that's the thought I really want to leave you with. Maybe this whole journey isn't about learning something new. Maybe it's about remembering something ancient, something fundamental that's already inside of us. If we all started out in a state of pure ecstasy, maybe the path back isn't a discovery, but just a recollection. Something to think about.